Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. Like Samantha said, anything goes. This is all about answering questions for you. So unmute yourself, type in and fire away.
And then go ahead, Troy and Chris.
Hey Troy.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was just noticing today as the weather switched here in Texas, got real warm all of a sudden.
Mm.
I feel like I have almost like a reverse seasonal disorder thing that comes on. Like I get real excited and it gets like a lot nicer. Like it's cold here in the fall and winter, and I spend so much time outside and I actually feel like higher energy. And then like spring, summer, when the weather starts to get really hot, I feel the opposite. I feel like I have the symptoms or the mood that generally are associated with like winter coming on, where I feel like I just kind of crash like a little bit emotionally and physically.
So let me ask you a couple questions. First off, I mean, was that the time also when the cedar stuff was going on or no?
No, I actually still had like pretty high energy and stuff and was spending time outside.
Okay. And are you having any issues like dizziness, like weird sweating, anything like that?
No.
Like, and what's your sleep like?
My sleep has never been super great. Kind of comes and goes, but I've always kind of had sleep issues. I've been sleeping not great, but not terrible of late.
And is there like big swings and moods or anything like that?
Not like back and forth all the time, but like the swing is like when fall hits and the temperatures start to cool off, I feel like I peak and my mood goes really high. I feel like positive about everything, and like I don't know, I just feel like I've got the wind at my back. And then
nice.
When it starts getting hot, like today, it got up to 90. And
oh boy, Texas! Like,
yeah,
it's February and you guys are already in the 90s.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I get grumpy and my like emotions are kind of funny.
Okay.
And then I feel like kind of an energy dip for like a good month or two at least.
Okay. So let me look something up here. So
it's become more like this as I've gotten older. I didn't notice it as much in my youth.
Yeah, like so sometimes what happens is I mean, we're probably looking at one of two things. And we're either looking at before I go into what I'm saying is, like in the West, we really don't have a great we don't have this conversation, or we don't really like look at these couple aspects. But I would say we're probably looking at one of two things, and given how hard you like had how hard of a time you had with the cedar allergies and everything, which that's a very common complaint in Texas, like very, very common, as well as other areas. But I mean, like I hear it the most from you guys in Texas. Like, and I mean, I've been there where I literally can see the pollen floating in the air, like it's crazy. And so there's like one of two things that usually with something like this is the rabbit hole that I go down. So one, there's these series of like processes in the body. And again, in the West, we really don't have like great terms or great ways of talking about this. But it's referred to as like the like vegetative or neurovegetative states, and so it has to do with like how a certain part or a series of like processes in the autonomic nervous system play out or don't play out. Like, you know, it's not even always like about like an imbalance in the nervous system. It can be just like things got depleted or things are you know, agitated or whatever. So there's like two things that I'd like to look at. Like, you know, one is this idea of the neurovegetative vegetative state. And let me just throw some oils out and let's have you just work on one at a time. But remind me, we'll send a little thing to Troy about. We'll also send out something to you just to see. There is a blend. I don't think I've ever put it on the site, but I used to just give it to people directly when I would be interacting with them. But you know, one is Melissa, one is basil. You know, ginger can do it. Lemon verbena, and you know, cistus would be another component. Like probably Melissa or basil would probably be your two best bets, maybe even ginger. You could always also work all three, but we'll send you a little sample blend just to see if this helps you, because I'll also be curious about the effects that from the cedar allergies, how this would help that or not help it. You know, it's one of those things where I think it will help, but I'm not quite sure. And so I'd like to use you as a guinea pig, if that's okay. And we'll have you use it for a bit. And energetically, it's like, it's not like purifying elementals. It's almost like changing them. Like you're like realigning them. Again, there's not the greatest way of talking about it, but it's like, say, their function is like part of decay. Like you can almost like take it and like switch it to where it's like, no, it's about building up the body. You know how like you would use like stem cells? You can kind of do that to a certain extent with elementals. It kind of takes a skill set, but like here it would be really simple to go through and do. And so I'd have you just probably inhale those. It's not really into any particular centers. You know how you do the body awareness where you just kind of breathe it into the body? I'd breathe it into the body, but this is going to sound weird. You know how, like, say when you're doing Twin Hearts and you sit and you bless the earth, right? You're sitting there and your awareness is on your heart or your heart and your crown and whatever, right? And then you go, well, okay, maybe a more potent form of this is at a certain stage, you can go, okay, I'm going to put my awareness on the blue pearl, on the mental permanent seed, and I'll bless, right? Eventually, what you want to get to, like we were kind of touching on this when we were doing the foundation for mystical healing, is instead of being on the chakra or even on the seed, you want to radiate the blessing from the body. Now, here's the issue with that. Like if you haven't been working the chakras for a while, or then even the mental seed, it's kind of going to do nothing. Like you have to kind of almost do these steps where you step into something, you go, okay, let's clean all this up. And then you take another step, you go, okay, new space, let's clean all this up. And then you take another step and you go, okay, new space, let's clean all this up. So you keep walking to this place of stimulating the body to do this, because part of what's happening, like allergies is a perfect example, is it is about how your body is responding to external stimuli. And so when you're blessing with your awareness on your heart and your crown, you're starting to change the way your energy body is interacting with the physical environment, right? Then when you go to the mental permanent seed, instead of your energy field fluctuating in the face of negativity, it's staying kind of big and you're bringing in more energy and it's really bringing light into the body, right? When you start blessing and you're doing it from the place of the body, your you're changing how your body reacts to negative stimuli, right? Be it allergies, be it the a-hole at work, be it your Uncle Bob, whatever it is. You're literally re-educating or retraining your body to react to the environment in a different way. And so that usually is one of two things. That is this neurovegetative set of responses or state, like however you want to say it. You know, even amongst medical aromatherapists, we have conversations about it behind the scenes, but we don't have like a straightforward way of talking about it. Like I remember being in a group of them one time and I go, really, if we were to define neurovegetative state, what would that look like? And everybody was quiet. Like, so it's like you're tracking a Bigfoot or something. Like, you know, it's probably there. Maybe it's not there, but you see a series of, maybe Bigfoot wasn't the best choice, but you get the idea. And so we're trying to change the way the body reacts to any sort of negative stimuli, right? And so here we'll look at it from the point of view, first, it's the neurovegetative state, right? If the response, like within a few days, doesn't really shift it or change it, then the next thing would be to look at the adaptive part of your immune system. And that just simply means like every time you have an exposure, your immune system kind of remembers it and goes, okay, next time we're going to do this. Like, let's amp this up. So, you know, you have the exposures to the cedar pollen, it makes you kind of sick. So then the next year it comes around, you'll notice the allergies kind of keep getting worse and worse, right? So then you go, okay, your immune system, this part of it, starts going, okay, last time it was really bad. Let's be more aggressive about it. So it actually increases this like reaction in the body that you could say, I mean, this is open for debate, but you could say the adaptive immune system is probably the source of what we call stress. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint because you can't just go like, oh, there's a test and this and that. But the more that you fortify the adaptive part of the immune system, the more stress levels go down. And if you look at what oils go through and fortify this part of the immune system, they're all ones that also just coincidentally reduce stress or like stress oils, right? And so I would say let's try the neurovegetative aspect of it. And then if that doesn't work in like maybe 4 or 5 days, maybe a week, we'll have you switch over to something for the adaptive immunity. And so adaptive immunity, a lot of times you're treating this aspect of the immune system, but really what you're also treating is some processes in the immune system, but like the reflection of the treatment, like when you can go like, oh, if I try to assess this, what is the thing that I can look at as the indicator, right? It's usually the thymus. Like if you go to the thymus and go, okay, how agitated, how strong, how weak, how whatever is the thymus? What state is the thymus in? That will tell you boatloads about that whole adaptive part of the immunity. And given what you're talking about and, you know, just the history over the last few months, the struggle with the allergies and, you know, sleep and now you're talking about like having almost opposite responses with the weather changes and everything. Boy, that's really making me think it's probably one of these two things. And I don't know, have we ever talked about any of this? I don't think we've ever really talked about very much of this. I know it's not in the notes just because you would have to have a long explanation to be able to do it. It might have been in one of the classes, but I doubt it. But let's have you start with Melissa, basil, or ginger. Or, I mean, you could take all three of them internally if you want. Inhale them, you can just kind of do one after the other. So the good thing about this, especially with the adaptive immunity, is basically like stress. When we're generating stress, the next response is then we start to like trigger things in our body, right? And then the next response from there is to generate lower emotions. And it happens like really fast. It happens just like, it's not like, oh, over 10 minutes this happens and over 10 minutes this happens. It's just, but when you break it down and you look at this piece, that piece, this piece, you want to calm down that adaptive immunity, then you want to reduce triggers, and then you start reducing lower emotions. And then the next phase is you're looking at what you would call like excessive emotions, which just means that those mechanisms have gotten really super agitated and they're producing a lot of emotions, or there's just a lot impacted in the energy body. And so this usually improves health, but like non-specifically, like you would almost call this like a terrain treatment. And again, like in the West, we really don't talk about things like that. We talk about prevention and things, but we don't talk about doing these kind of terrain treatments in therapeutic approaches because they are non-specific. You don't have like symptoms that you really look at like, oh yeah, let's target these things to make the physiology function better or make the emotions function better. It's almost like, you don't really know it until you see it. It's like a set of these like rhythms and processes in the body that a lot of times haven't even been named. And so I think we just start with that. Like start with using those single oils and see how that makes you feel. And we'll get something off to you in the morning, just a little sample, just to see how that works for you. And let's go from there. So what I'd be looking at is, okay, how are your moods and your emotions, or like how you said, like you get a little cranky when it's bright and sunny, and you feel good when it's cold, or like fall kind of weather, like overcast. So let's see how you do with the weather changes. And then I'd be curious about sleep, like if your sleep's improving, if you have any disorientation, like dizziness upon waking, or when you're doing stuff or bending over, things like that, where there's just these little weird symptoms that you wouldn't really call like, oh, this is a condition, but it's just like, oh, I have this weird thing that like when I get out of a bath, I'm dizzy for a moment, something like that. And so let's have you try that for a week. Because I have you like kind of inhale clary. Remember about like a month ago or something, didn't I have you inhale like clary sage for a little bit?
Yeah, it was further back than that, but yeah, when I
A
was
couple months ago. I mean, that's kind of where I was starting to go with that, but I was like, well, we'll see. But I was actually like, I had that thought about you a while back, and then I was like, I don't know, it's probably something else. And then I just kind of discounted it. I just had you do the one thing. And so clary sage is very fortifying to the adaptive immune system, especially the dark clary sage, but both of them will work. And so let's go down. Let's just try one at a time though, just to see what it is, because then we can really sharpen what we're going to do therapeutically.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, let's target that. Let's have you be a little bit of a guinea pig if you're okay with that. Like I'll get you a little bit of each one, and we'll just go from there.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Chris, then Tracy.
Hey, Chris.
Thanks, Sam. Hey, Greg.
Hey.
I have a couple questions on some clients.
Yeah, fair away.
I have a client. She has been breast cancer free for about 5 years now. So she had really high estrogen levels and was taking an, I am going to say this wrong, anastrozole.
Mhm.
Zol. So that just recently got stopped, which helped the pain in her body, right?
Okay.
It really diminished it. But there's still that issue of her body overproducing estrogen. Is there any oil that can help?
An inhibitor.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is, and I'm trying to recall what that is. Let me look that up tonight and see if I can't track that down. I know, you know, because the thing with like the different kinds of cancers, I mean, one of the areas where Western medicine has really refined itself over a period of time in the cancer realm is breast cancer. Like breast cancer
Right.
really refined it so that, I mean, over the last few years, there's lots of physicians who don't even use chemo to treat it. You know, they're using like
Mhm.
hormonal therapies and things like this. And so I do remember using something to reduce estrogen levels. Let me look it up because I'm drawing a blank on it right now. It's been so long.
Yeah, no problem.
But my guess is it's probably going to be something that you would also use to like dry up milk production. Like I want to say like sage or something like that dries up milk production. Again, I'd
Did you
have to.
say milk?
Yeah, like when they're
baby's milk?
breastfeeding. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And so it does that because of certain processes in the body. And so I have some notes on it, but I'd have to go back and look.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
also, can you add some, maybe a specific protocol pH wise for that?
Well, any time that you're really wanting to regulate the hormonal system
Mm-hmm.
in general is, I mean, just pound on the ajna. Like,
Oh, okay.
like energize it with a bunch of gold, and then clean it with green and violet, and then energize it green, blue, violet, and gold. Like
Green, blue, and gold. Okay.
violet, then gold. Yeah. So
Okay.
green, blue, violet, and then gold. Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Like, you know, because you're wanting to, because it's not just estrogen that's out of sequence, it's several glands that are out of sequence.
Uh-huh.
And so you're wanting to kind of really just balance out the system. You know, like Three Wise Men, we're jumpstarting the whole endocrine system, but here we're not wanting that. We're just wanting to regulate it. We're wanting to sequence. So lemon verbena potentially could help, but let me go through and look. Let me, before I start mouthing off about something, let me
No
look up
problem.
and do it intelligently rather than just off the cuff.
No problem. And there's this client that came back, initially saw her almost a year ago, had a lot of issues with addiction, smoking, alcohol. She took meth and heroin about 10 years ago.
Okay.
6 months ago with coke. So she's trying to work on her addiction to smoking and alcohol presently. Any oils that would help augment that protocol?
Okay, just because of the coke, like I don't know if you guys have had this discussion. Has there been any sex addiction kind of things or?
Well, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I would use things that are very supportive of like brain chemistry and like mood. African bluegrass would be helpful. I mean, straight up for addiction stuff, like things that are supportive to the nerves, like nervines, like so Melissa, basil, um, um, there's that nervine blend. You could even probably throw in lemongrass in that realm.
Okay.
Possibly even sage. Actually, now that I'm talking that out, sage might be a good go-to one.
Just the normal sage?
Just normal
Like the regular?
sage or Dalmatian sage, like something like that.
Okay.
I mean, I probably would like it if she used a little bit of like Melissa or basil, like internally, just because of the nervine effect and things like that. It's just anytime you have like addiction, the more you calm and soothe the nerves. And
Got it.
so sage is calming to the nerves. Those two things are calming to the nerves.
Mhm.
And then the African bluegrass, I would actually either have her put it on as a body tonic or a salt bath, like kind of regular as a salt bath, because there's things that happen in the skin that have to do with brain chemistry and like moods and things like that, it sounds weird, but it's still like a kind of toxicity that can happen. And then it affects how the organs function. It affects how the lymphatic system, how the nervous system kind of responds. And so like the more you clean up the skin, even with your healing, going through and just like really thoroughly sweeping like all the skin,
Oh, okay.
they'll all of a sudden they'll feel like a bit lighter. Like you can see like there is a shift in their chemistry. They function a little different. And when you're looking at things like meth, PCP, LSD, there's a certain amount of exposures where it starts to like change the physiology of the brain. And as much as you try to work on the brain, it helps a bit. But the big thing is, it might change the brain, but then the brain starts changing the physiology because, it's giving all the orders to the body.
Mhm.
And just going to the brain, it's like you're having to try to overcome all the things that have happened. So you almost like walk it backwards. So you start at the skin, you do a lot of blood purification, with the organs and the lungs and all that. And then eventually you're going to make your way back up to the brain. But I'd almost like walk it backwards. And so I usually start with the skin.
Mhm.
How hard did she use the cocaine? I'm just curious. Like just for a little while, or was it like a year, 2 years, 5 years?
Years.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably a dopamine issue in the brain.
Is that why she's feeling so disconnected to
Yeah.
herself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the reason why I asked about the sex thing is back in the day when I was specializing in addiction, usually specifically when people were using cocaine and going off of it, we would have them be celibate for like 6 months to a year because what cocaine hits in the brain is very similar to sex. And so, you kind of go off the coke, but the sex part keeps hitting that part of the brain and doesn't let the brain shift and change. And so I'm not telling you that she needs to do that, but there's a dopamine issue. And so there's an herb that works that, but I'd almost like to see how she responds to some initial treatment and really support the nervous system, like just calming, soothing to the nervous system. Even the use of sage is very calming to the sensory nerves and balance out the autonomic part of the nervous system. with like lemongrass. Lemongrass is your best bet, but still you could use like anise or tarragon, marjoram, something of that nature.
Mhm.
That would be super helpful. I mean, even the stuff that we're going to cover on the weekend for the trauma release could be helpful, just because there's usually a lot of painful feelings involved with addiction. I mean, that's the thing, is the addiction is just a reflection of something else going on. There's usually a lot of pain underneath, like a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt feelings. And so
Yeah.
you almost want to kind of keep going back and forth with treating the physical condition, but soothing the trauma and the hurt feelings when you're going through and working with somebody like that. Yeah.
Someone that she's related to seeing me too, and I just learned the history of abuse.
Yeah. It's
Since
usually
childhood.
yeah, something
Yeah.
usually has happened when, yeah.
So deal with the addiction first and then the
I
trauma.
would go back and forth, honestly. Like I would go back even in the same session. Like you could be in the middle of doing some physical work and then stop and do a little psychotherapy. So
Got it.
when we talk about abuse, are we talking physical or sexual or verbal?
Verbal for sure. Maybe some physical in a violent way, not sexual.
Okay, so really clean up the basic chakra and really look at the protective web of the basic chakra. In that case too, I'd also look at the kidneys quite substantially.
Okay. For
Yeah,
the protective webs or?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
One last quick question, Greg.
Sure, you
When
fire away.
someone is, yeah, so when someone's on the having a healing and then they've been snoring away, deep in their sleep, they come back, they said, oh, more than, so they've been on the table sometimes for 90 minutes. Oh, that went really fast and I didn't fall asleep. Where did they go?
They fell asleep.
Oh, they fell asleep.
Yeah, they
But
totally fell
their
asleep.
brain is just going. Is that?
Their brain is going, and so that's the thing. Sometimes when you're dealing with somebody like here, we have a circle of people. Even if people are new, they're like used to kind of doing some of these processes and something. They're used to kind of the things that happen. But when you're dealing with like kind of more like the general public kind of person,
Mhm.
they don't always like feel the shift right off the bat, and they don't always like know what's like happening. Like you can see it manifest in them, but they don't always put two and two together. And so the thing with that is, if it's somebody that you don't know or you're not sure about, and they really don't have a background about this, ask them lots of questions before you start doing the session on them, because it's almost like, instead of informing them like this is going to happen and that's going to happen, you do it more with like questions, because it makes them, how like we're doing on the weekend, where it's like check into your body and then check into the environment, then check in with your body and check in with the environment. You almost manually walk them through that, where you ask them a question, well, how does your left leg feel versus your right leg? They'll have to like think about it and go in, and they go, yeah, they feel the same. The answer doesn't matter, but you're manually making them check into their body. You know what I'm saying?
During the healing?
Before you even start the healing.
Oh, before. Okay.
Yeah. So like you just like 2 minutes, like two minutes, 5 minutes, where you go, okay, if they say I'm in pain, go, okay, well, what kind of pain is it? Is it, dull pain? Is it sharp pain? On a scale of 1 to 10, is it a 1? Is it a 10? Does it fluctuate? Is it always the same? You just ask them a bunch of questions where they have to start kind of monitoring it. And then at the end of the session, when you've produced a result, or at least the result is in process, you can go like, okay, how do you feel? And they'll go, well, there's still pain. And you go, okay, well, it was a 10. Why are you now? And they might go like a 4. So you're showing them the progress, because I think I told you, like one time I had this person and I was working on her, and, she had no background in any of this. And I think I didn't even do 1 to 10. I said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 100, where's your pain? And she was like, it's 95 or 100 or something. It was like just, full thing. And so it got done with a session. And when like sometimes you're not sure when a session goes well. And then there's times where, like this session rocked, like it produced a result. And it was one of those. And so I was asking her, like I'd watch her walk, I watched her body movement, I had her do ranges of motion, and I go, how's the pain? And she's like, nope, still there, still there, still there.
Mhm.
And I was like, man, all like her breathing's different, her body movement's different, her look on her face is different, she looks more relaxed. And I'll go, okay, so you were a 95 before, where are you at now? And she's like, a 2. I go, so you went from 95 to 2, but the pain's still there. And she goes, yeah, it hasn't gone away. You know what I mean? So
Uh-huh.
your definition of what's happening doesn't always match their definition. And so the best way to do that is to ask them questions. Ask them questions before, and then you go back and you ask kind of similar questions about the condition, because you're helping them to become more aware of how their body is shifting and changing, which then makes them a little bit more attuned to what's happening in the session, but also it makes them more attuned of what's happening once they leave. Like, because it might be the way they're sitting at their computer is causing some of this, or the way they're driving, or the way they sleep. And the more they kind of connect with their body, the more they can go like, oh, yeah, what I do right here, this totally contributes to that. You know what I mean? Where they will start adjusting and adapting and trying to reduce the habits or whatever actions contribute to it. They'll like start to realize it and then start to break some of those patterns. And so it's always kind of good to like start with a few questions, especially if you don't know them. Start with a few questions and just, plus you know what you're dealing with. Like you can kind of tell like how they answer, not the answers themselves, but like how they answer.
Mhm.
And then when you go afterwards, you go, okay, how's your breathing? How do you feel? Do you feel relaxed? Do you have more flexibility? Do you just start asking those questions, and it helps it sink into their body that, because you are kind of wrestling with a little bit of a thought form of they've defined it, and not only have they defined it, sometimes they've identified with it. And when you start moving away from it, they'll go, no, this is where I'm at. And you're wanting to educate them that, no, we're starting to move away from this. We're starting to move away from this condition. We're starting to shift and change out of this. And you kind of make them more of a participant. If you just give them a bunch of information, they won't have that awareness. So a series of questions is always good, because it makes them check in with their body and then they answer, and then they check in with their body and then they answer. And so you're literally kind of doing body awareness, external situation, body awareness, external situation, but you're just manually doing it with the questions.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And I'll get that information out to you tonight. Like I think I know where it's at. So I just got to go, and it's actually in some old handwritten notes, the way we used to do things in ancient times.
Oh, take a snapshot of that, Greg. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Tracy, then Denise.
Hey, Tracy.
Hi. So I am, I'm having that surgery on my rotator cuff on 3/6.
Mhm.
And it's right after our weekend that's here. And I know that you've put it out somewhere about what to stop before you do surgery and when to stop it. But can you refresh me, please?
Like 48 hours, just stop taking all things internal.
Okay, so like all internal oils and stuff. Can I keep using the inhalations?
Yeah. That's fine. Just no internal.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I still have a lot of grief about my dog, which is it's almost like accumulated loss from the last
Sure.
10 years.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
seems to just kind of be rolling through me because, she was here to, she helped me
Hey,
through all that
I
time.
completely get that. Like they're our little buddies, you know,
Oh
I
my
totally
God.
get that. Yeah.
Well, I can't stop myself crying. I don't want to. I want to go ahead and let it out. But my head's hurting. Like it just, when I cry like that, my head starts hurting. And then my mucus is, this is so gross and I'm so sorry. It is clear and rubbery to the point where it's really hard to get out.
Yeah. So I would inhale like different forms of thyme or black pepper or even pink pepper. Black pepper is probably a little bit better. But you want to be able to thin that down and really, if you're going to tell me a gross mucus story, you're going to have to do better than just like clear and kind of thick and sticky. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories over the years. That's not
Oh,
entertaining at all.
it's not entertaining for me either.
I thought I was going to hear something really good and gross and
No, like the
so
doctor seems to think it's like rhinitis, and
yeah.
uh,
I would do, I mean, rosemary verbena is always good. Like you can start taking that internally. I think that's a really good thing because it's very balancing to the body and especially very good for mucus oriented conditions that are associated with inflammation in the mucous membranes, like in the respiratory tract. The other one you could use would be probably helichrysum, and it's not as liquefying, but it does kind of break down some of the mucus as well. But things that have a little bit of an effect on circulation, like thyme, I use benchmark thyme when I really want to get things moving in my nose. Black pepper works as well, but any of the thymes would probably work, but benchmark times my kind of go-to one for that. And
that's
kind
inhaling,
of
right?
moving. Well, yeah, just inhale it.
Yeah, okay.
You just take a bunch of long, slow, deep breaths, and like I'll do that for a little while, and then just blow my nose really good, and it clears it all out. Yeah,
What about that mucus?
yeah. I mean that's for breaking down mucus as well. Yeah, but if you're just trying to get it to run and be able to blow your nose and get it out. Sometimes you just have one of those moments where like, oh God, I feel like I got, stuffed a bunch of Chex Mix up my nose and like storing it there, You get those little whistles and things going in your nose, and you're just like, I just gotta get this out of here. Right. You want to get it moving as fast as possible. And that mucus blend, Anula, they're very good for breaking down the mucus. Terebinth is good for drying it up, but sometimes it's almost like impacted in there and you just want to reduce that. So rosemary, verbena internally, and then inhale some form of thyme or black pepper, and it should make things move. And then you can really do a good couple nose blows and get it out there. Still take the rosemary, verbena for a little while. Over a period of time, and then probably just reduce like milk products, like anything lactose oriented, just for like a few days.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Oh, by the way, that is a glorious top you have on.
Oh, thank you.
One of my favorite colors. You look
like I have some Indian friends and they say this is the color that you wear when you go to a party or a festival or something. So
well, thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah. So you think it's just because of the air quality there in Birmingham, or like why do you think it's happening? I mean, it could just be stress as well.
I think it's it started happening when I started crying 30,000 feet in the air in an airplane. So, I think it's the air quality in Barcelona was crap. I got back here, it's better here than it was in Barcelona.
Plus you flew a lot. Okay, I forgot that you flew. So
and I'm flying tomorrow. I'm flying to Denver tomorrow.
Do a little Shazandra as well. You're probably also a little dehydrated.
Yeah, I'm trying to drink a lot of water, but it
Yeah,
doesn't
but
really.
even when you get a little dehydrated, even just drinking a little bit of water, extra water, sometimes doesn't cut it. The Shazandra, you have some Shazandra?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah, the Shazandra will help utilize the water in your body and make your body harness it. Sometimes when you're taking in extra water, your body just throws it off and doesn't really utilize it. And so it will hydrate the mucous membranes and make it easier. You're probably just a little bit dehydrated. Not to get
Yeah.
super personal, have you been constipated?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, you're dehydrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a little bit
Okay.
dehydrated.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I know all this stuff, but sometimes,
Hey, when you're in the middle of it, it's still
yeah,
hard to
it's
think
hard
it
to,
out, you know?
it is hard to
Super
see it,
hard to
see
think
your
it out.
way.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to being in
Looking
class
forward to
with
seeing
you.
you guys out there too, and take the Shazandra with you. Keep taking it through the trip, and drink some extra water. Take some rosemary verbena in. Yeah, and then you could always mix in a little eucalyptus or something in there just to kind of open things up. But all the stuff that for the respiratory tract, but the ones that we talked about very specifically.
Okay. Thank you so much,
You're
Gray.
so welcome. Safe travels.
Thank you.
And then go ahead, Denise, then David.
Hey, Denise.
Hi, thank you so much for rushing my products to me.
Oh,
I
you're so
prob-
welcome.
I probably should have the black pepper because we're going to be in the same mucus vein here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's the amoxicillin and everything I've been doing, it seems to be breaking things up. But you know what? I didn't have like dizziness or plugged ears till I'm through all that. And then I kind of had a yeast thing come up. So, but I could tell it's wanting to break loose. So should I
Okay.
just tell me what to do? Should I stay with rosemary verbena?
Yeah, see what the rosemary verbena, but you are having tell me some of the symptoms again. Like you are having a little bit of, you said like a yeast issue or
Yeah, first, the next I got the yeast infection, and then, but all through this, I didn't have the dizziness, and I think it's because my left ear is plugged up,
Yeah.
and so my head's kind of really still thick, but it's trying to break up. Which of course that wasn't happening before, but it must have been a lot worse infection. And, I was so cold with it. I still kind of cycle with that cold, but it could be because I had to switch. I was forced to switch thyroid medication because they didn't want to compound any animal products into
Right.
it. So I had to switch over
Right.
to a synthetic. And I think first it was like almost getting into a Ferrari. I was like, I could just almost feel my heart start to pump, really start to go. So I kind of did every other day. And then now it's kind of leveled out. It's pretty happy. I know I could add in stuff if I wanted to now, but it took 2 weeks at least. So it tells you I'm pretty sensitive, but that's the only medication I take regularly is that thyroid.
Okay.
Okay. So, but plugged ear and dizziness, especially the dizziness.
Dizziness. Like, would you call that vertigo, or you just feel a little like
a little bit like you're a little bit on a ship, just a little bit, but more
Okay.
than any, not quite as bad
Yeah.
as a ship, but when you get up, it's a little warm.
Let's just do this one thing. Like, so sit like this, and then you're just going to tilt your head back like so,
Okay.
and let it be there for about 15 seconds. And with that, does that make you dizzy?
Maybe a little, just a
Little
little bit.
bit.
On that left
Okay.
ear.
Let me look something up here. Yeah. So that's what I suspected, but I wanted to double check.
Thank you.
First conditions. Doesn't look like I have dizziness in here. That's kind of weird. Okay, give me just a sec here. Give me just a second.
I kind of wondered if the yeast was up in my sinuses. I kind of wondered that.
Okay, let's try a couple of different things. I'll give you a list and let's see what you have. Anise,
I have that.
okay, hyssop.
I have that.
Probably don't have Kaput. Yeah, that's a pretty obscure one. Even maybe peppermint. Maybe peppermint. How about, do you have a sage of some sort?
The Dalmatian sage. And I have
Perfect.
another sage too. I have 2 sages.
Okay, so let's have you do this. Let's have you take a few drops of the anise internally and inhale it as well. But I'd rotate between the anise, the sage, and the hyssop. Just take like 15, 20 inhalations with one, 15 inhalations with another, and then the next one.
Okay.
Traditionally, when there's just kind of vertigo, I would say, oh, let's like hyssop a lot of times will knock that out. Like hyssop's kind of a go-to thing. But you have the complication of the thing with the ear, and like your body has some other things going on, and I don't want to treat this like just separate from everything else. And so I think the combination of those 3 will help some of the things in the other parts of the body as well. And you're knocking out some of the sinus related things. And as far as like the yeast issue, like I'd almost like treat this for like a day or 2 and just kind of stabilize like the dizziness and all that.
Sure.
And then in about a day or 2, I'd probably start taking a little bit of, do you have some cinnamon leaf or some sort of
I do.
cinnamon?
I have
Yeah.
the cinnamon.
Yeah, so like give it a couple of days and then start taking a little bit of cinnamon internally. And cinnamon's really good for knocking out like yeast and fungal issues.
Oh, that's great. This sounds
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Because even if it's up in my sinuses, it would take
Yeah.
care of the work.
Yeah. It should help with any of that. Yeah.
And all the other, like the anise, the hyssop and sage, besides inhalation, do I take any besides anise internally?
Just the anise. Yeah, the anise is the only one that like I'd like to have you take internally. The rest you're just inhaling. If you want to put a little bit of one of them in like a lotion or something and rub it on your neck, feel free to do that. But more just inhalations with all that. And if one seems to be like, man, this one really makes me feel better, just double down on that one, and you can even drop the other ones and just keep working it.
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds good. Okay, one other question.
Sure.
Just because of a couple of callers ago was talking about someone that had the pretty strong addiction, I have a friend that had become alcoholic. She was definitely alcoholic, and she got a DUI. She is taking her, but she's been, sober for 10 years now,
Mhm.
but she still suffers from depression, and I'd say anxiety, depression. So is there anything I could encourage her with? She kind of got fired from her job, and
Yeah. Oh, that's a bummer.
I know.
I would start with, let me bring my notes back up here. I would start with probably like really working hard with like sage, and I think she has a little bit of an imbalance in the autonomic nervous system. A lot of times, like, this is what I was telling some practitioners a while back that were from a different modality, but we were talking out like how to treat some things. And I was like, like when people present with like a bunch of different conditions and you don't know what it is, you can almost just say, let's just go to the autonomic nervous system, basically fight, flight versus rest and repair, and just start there. And then if that's already balanced and good, then you have established like a foundation that makes it easier for you to do other treatments. But most times that system and almost all of this is not balanced. Like it's a little too much of one or the other. And so with something like this, I would look at like, using like some lemongrass or some anise. Like lemongrass would be the one I would go to.
Okay.
For balancing out, and then some sage for
Which one?
Just regular sage, Dalmatian sage, the sage triloba, any of those would be good.
Thank you.
And it's calming and soothing to the body. But those two oils, the lemongrass and the sage, are also in various traditions and cultures are considered cure-alls. And cure-alls like do a lot of they address a lot of processes in the body that are non-specific to like a symptom. They help bring a balance and a level of normal function to the body that is not just about a symptom, but just like balancing out different things going on in the body. And it moves your body to like a more efficient way of like functioning that usually reflects in moods and emotion. And in situations like this, where she's prone to some depression, if it's to the point where she lost her job over the depression, I would start with the sage, kind of get things balanced out. And then as things started to feel a little bit better, even if they didn't, after like a week or two of treating with that, I'd follow it up with cinnamon. And, depending, alcohol can cause some reactions in the body. If there was prescription drugs, they cause a certain kind of thing. But if you step back and you go, let's not look at just like what little area, pinpoint area that it's causing some poor function or diminished function. But one thing you do is like sometimes you just go, okay, let's kind of stabilize everything we best we can for just a little tiny bit, and then just start jump-starting all the processes. And so then you would go to like cinnamon, like the cinnamon leaf, because it just is a body stimulant, like not like caffeine. It just makes all the body processes jumpstart. And then the cinnamon and what else would I use there? Cinnamon, maybe rosemary, verbena. Probably just the cinnamon for a little bit.
I'll buy her those two and have
Yeah.
kind of.
And so like this is the thing, like how potent this is. So there's this one medication, granted it's we're talking about alcohol here, but this other one was one of the high potent forms of painkillers, an opioid. Probably as potent as fentanyl, but it wasn't fentanyl. It's this thing called Opana. And, I had some patients one time where 3 of them were taking it daily and had been taking it daily for years. And it wasn't they were taking it because, you know, somebody gave it to them. Like it wasn't a doctor. Basically, the doctor got in trouble later. And so, you know, those really high-end painkillers, they don't just like increase the levels of opioids. They try to do things with the brain chemistry, and they try to turn things off and jumpstart things. And, you know, they try to play with the body processes to make the med work better. I mean, I get what they're doing, but this is really strong. And so, you know, I had one person and they were wanting to quit. And so one person I was working with directly, and I had them use cinnamon multiple times a day. Like every couple hours, they were taking a dose of cinnamon every couple hours. Then another one, he didn't want to take the cinnamon, but we did it with a really strong form of ginseng. He would take ginseng. He wouldn't take any, he called all the other stuff hippies. He would always say, oh, I don't want to do any of that hippie stuff. And so I was like, okay, I get it. And then the third person didn't want to do any of it. So the first person, that person got through it, and it was rough, but, you know, they got through it and they were okay. Second guy, it took him probably a month to snap out of it, where the first person, it was a couple of days. And he had some pretty rocky moments there. Like at one point, he almost had to call the ambulance,
Wow.
right? The third person died. Like that's how serious this medication is. Like it's crazy strong. And, you know, the withdrawals is just, it's shut down a bunch of body processes. And the thing that got them through it was just constantly jump starting the body's processes. And so, you know, ginseng wouldn't have been my first choice, but it was all he would do. So, you know, I did some healing on him while he was doing the ginseng. And then the other person, we just treated with cinnamon. And, you know, another time I used cayenne pepper on somebody with it as well, and it worked equally as well. They just had to do more of it. And that's the thing sometimes when there's been long-term addictions, is that it's not just that there's the addictive part, but the physiology changes a little bit. It's not that it changes, it just starts functioning differently. And so the cinnamon just keeps making you go back to like proper functioning. And then after that, I would probably, like after a week or two, follow it with 3 wise men, you know, or frankincense or myrrh, and internally just start jump starting all the glands. There, like when she gets to that point, the depression will probably lift pretty substantially.
That would be amazing. I think
Yeah.
she's suffered with this a very long time.
Yeah.
Because she lost her daughters because of it. I mean, they're alive, but
Yeah, but there's no
Yeah.
relation. Yeah.
But how about now on the sage? How do you internal?
Topical, just topical, like inhale it, salt baths. You could do a body tonic, you could do it in a lotion, you know, she could just put like 8-10 drops in and then squirt some lotion and just like kind of rub it on her torso and her neck. Just keep getting it all over the body.
Okay, and then the cinnamon, that will go internal though.
That's
at
internal.
that point in a couple weeks from now.
Yeah,
Right.
cinnamon would be internal, and the 3 wise men would be internal. The lemongrass to balance out the nervous system, it can be internal, or you can have her do, you know how we do that pattern where we go front heart, forehead, back head, and then reverse it. Have her inhale the lemongrass that way.
Oh, so the lemongrass, I'm sorry, I missed that part. The lemongrass, I sorry, remember the ear thing? Okay.
Yeah.
So what was, because I thought you said something liniment, but you probably said lemongrass.
Yeah, lemongrass. Yeah.
What do you want me to do with that one now?
Either have her take a few drops internally, or do the front heart, forehead, back head pattern, and then reverse it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're so
We'll just
welcome.
get started and then I'll kind of feed back with, but it'd be really helpful. She's pretty, it was hard. And then the place she applied, they
Yeah.
really need help in every department, but they
Yeah.
called, said they couldn't, they had no work for her at this time.
I'm
So
glad to talk you through it, like, or her, like, however you want to do it, like, as you're going through it. And, sometimes little problems pop up, because it's never like you can just follow a template all the time to treat these things, but glad to talk it through with you guys if you need to. So,
oh, thank you.
shoot us an email or let us know and we'll get you the
Awesome.
info.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
You're
Sam.
welcome.
Okay.
And then go ahead, David, then Christy.
Hey,
Okay.
Dave.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you?
Good, good. I've got, as I'm sitting here, my list gets longer and longer.
You sound like me.
Yeah, hearing people's, issues brings up things. So, to start off, I've had a lot of trauma in my life.
Mhm.
Very sensitive. So I am joining you next weekend for both.
Oh, good.
So I'm going to tell you that. So I wanted to give you an update on the knees. You
Oh,
recommend
yes.
the joint relief, and then adding basil on top and bottom of the kneecap.
Right.
And it feels like it's making it weaker. In fact, I wasn't sure, but I used a power plate today, and it actually really hurt. My right knee really hurt, which it's never done before.
Hmm.
The joint relief is definitely helping my back shoulder, which I've had an injury like probably 40 years. But in terms of my knees, it feels like it's making it weaker, even with the basil.
So when you're standing up and okay, let me ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
So like when you're standing there, you're just kind of relaxing. Does it ever feel good for you? Like instead of just standing kind of straight with the legs pretty straightened, is it easier for you? Like if you flex the legs a little bit to stand there, or are you able to keep your legs relatively straight?
I've never really had an issue before.
Okay.
I could do either.
Okay. When you bend over to touch your toes, like, are you able to go kind of far, or do you start to bend your legs when that starts to happen?
My back is very stiff.
Back is stiff.
That's part of my family too.
Okay, so I mean, what you're kind of describing, like I'm wondering if you have a little bit of a muscle imbalance. Like what can happen with the knee is the hamstrings can become much stronger than the quadriceps. And so as you're treating the area, you're loosening up the quadricep a little bit, and the pain is increasing, which means like if you are loosening up the hamstring the quadricep, the front part of your leg, and then it's increasing, not decreasing, then it probably means as you are unwinding that, it's the thing that opposes that muscle group is going into a deeper level of flexion. Like, it's tightening up more because the front leg and the back leg have to balance each other. And so if one loses tone, the other one goes into like a spasm. And so it can happen with any kind of issue, but because it's a weight-bearing joint, it can happen easier. And so instead of putting the basal on the front side, let's have you put it, like the crease of your knee, go up a little bit, like a few inches, and then from a couple inches up, rub it on that lower part of the back of your leg and see if that doesn't take some of the tension out. And if that doesn't work, or even if it does work, we might switch you over to spikenard. And the reason, like spikenard and valerian and myrrh are all good for muscle imbalances. Like when you see this a lot when something's been inflamed for a while, like when an area becomes really super inflamed, the muscles that extend the joint, that make the joint open up, become inflamed, and then the things that bring it together, the flexors, they'll go into a deeper spasm. And it sounds like that's what's happening with your knee.
So I'm using spikenard on my feet, which I want to touch.
Let's just have you jump and just rub it on your knee, rub it behind your knee, rub it up the back of your leg. You know, you can even put a little bit on the front of the leg. You don't have to be as, like with the basil, you'd have to be real specific about, let's get it on the back of the leg. The spikenard, you can just hit the whole area and see,
Okay.
you know, see what happens. Let's
Okay,
have you do that for a little bit and see what happens.
should I continue or discontinue the joint relief?
I would continue the joint relief, but do them at different times in the day.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening with that. And then I wanted to tell you, my sleep has really improved for quite a while. I've had sleep issues, you know, for a long, long time. And for quite a while since I saw you way back in Chicago, it's been pretty good. But lately, if I do, I've been doing the routine. I forgot the workshop you did in Chicago, what the name of it was.
The Metatron technique.
Metatron, yeah, the last stage of Metatron, I was doing that. And when I do that, I sleep well. I use the spikenard. And if I don't do that, when I originally was using spikenard, I would sleep well, but I'm not sleeping well. I'm listening to you talk on YouTube. So I heard you when I do my coffee baths, by the way, which I'm doing. And I use the coffee scrub, which I love.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that was really nice. And when I do that, I listen to you about the oils. I learned that I could take tarragon and spikenard and I think it was frankincense even internally. And I'm doing that, but I'm not sleeping well unless I do, you know, a routine of inhaling oils. And I don't always have time. So I noticed that, you know, is there something I can do?
And even when you put the spikenard on your feet at night, that doesn't relax you enough to be able to fall asleep?
I do fall asleep. I wake up. Occasionally I wake up like at 4 or 5 or 3. And that's when I have trouble sometimes getting back to sleep. And I'll take the oils then, and I'll take the oils before I sleep, like internally. The spikenard, the tarragon, and even the frankincense.
Okay, give me just a sec here.
Yep.
Do you have some form of Palo Santo, like Palo Santo or Palo Santo fruit?
I have, oh yeah, I have it in one of the kits, and I also have a stick of it, which I burn.
Do you have like a little tiny bottle, or do you have like a bigger bottle or a roller ball, or?
It was in one of the kits. I did the Metatron and the Phoenix so far.
I can't remember what's in.
I can look.
You look and I'll look at the same time, and we'll see what.
I think it was a roller.
Okay, that's what I think too, but I'm gonna just double check. Yeah, it's a roller ball. The one from the Phoenix technique is a roller ball.
Yeah.
So let's have you, like, right as you go to bed, instead of like doing a routine, like you said, like sometimes you don't always have the ability to do it, rub some on like your chest,
Okay.
right? Rub a little bit on your temples, and this like thumb web right here,
Yeah.
rub some there, and you're already putting spikenard on your feet.
Yes.
Let's just see if that does it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is like what we're trying to do there is stimulate what we call the anabolic state, which is happening while you sleep. And it's the time where like your immune system and endocrine system, nervous system kind of reboot, but also skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, cardiac muscle. And that time in the morning is usually when you would be hitting that anabolic state. You know what I mean? Like by the time you
Yeah.
went to bed. So that makes me think like something's happening and it kicks you out of that state and you're just not able to go there. You know, spikenard's already taken you there, but let's amp it up a little bit with the Palo Santo.
Okay, okay. And then the other things.
And leave it by your bed, and if you wake up in the middle of the night, go roll a bunch on your chest and just see if you can go back to sleep.
Okay, okay, I'll definitely do that. And then, you know, what I also wanted to touch about, I'll just tell you three things, and then I'll go into these more deeply. So I've been feeling a lot of jumpiness lately, like a big need to soothe. And then I wanted to tell you, I've had energy issues, fatigue, since I was like 9 and my mother died. I
Oh,
felt
yeah.
this weight. I think I was 8. I don't know, 8 or 9. I felt this weight drop into me like a month to 2 months before she died.
Mhm,
First, you know, telling doctors that doesn't mean anything.
mhm.
You couldn't do it. It's all energetic, I know. So I've had energy fatigue almost ever since then. And then, you know, I've mentioned that meditation has been very difficult at certain times. And right now it's one of those times where I feel like I'm not connecting or I just fall asleep. So in terms of the jumpiness, a big need to soothe. So I'm wondering about those nerve tonics that you spoke about earlier.
Yeah, like, you know, the thing with lemongrass, you said you are doing the trauma class this weekend?
Yes.
Yeah, like some of this will probably get addressed in that. And so the big one would be, you know, there's the trauma release part, but anytime you're wanting to go and release trauma to a deeper level, you work with the nervous system for a little bit before you kind of start releasing things. I mean, you don't have to, but it makes it like easier. It's more soothing, and you're able to release more and shift and transition a little bit better when you do that. So even if you just inhale the lemongrass or take it internal, but you know, that pattern that I was talking about, I mean, this is going to be the very first thing we do in that class is lemongrass, front heart, back heart, forehead, back head, and then reverse it. And you know, every time, you know, like sometimes you feel a little off, or you feel a little weird, or you feel a little something, but it's not like you could go, oh, my XYZ is bothering me. You just feel like odd, you know. One of the things that I'll do is I'll do that pattern, or I'll take a few drops of the lemongrass internally, and all of a sudden things are better. And it's just it can be sometimes just these imbalances that happen in the nervous system. And you know, I mean, that's a significant trauma. Given when a parent passes, regardless of the age, it's a significant trauma, but at that age it's substantially more significant. And so
there was a lot more than that.
yeah, I figured. Yeah.
I mean,
usually just doesn't, like, that happens and everything is stable. It's like it usually throws things into
yeah, everything. fell
yeah.
apart.
So I'd start with some lemongrass there. Like
Okay.
I just inhale it. You can follow the pattern. You can take a few drops internally. Like really work the lemongrass for a little bit, because it's really super balancing to that. And it will make it easier to release some of those things. And you know, there's the emotional part, there's the mental part, but sometimes what happens as well is we have certain things in our memory mechanisms where the mind's always trying to predict the future and then try to avoid things that are uncomfortable. And
Right.
so as weird as it sounds, like you're doing all this work to release all these things and you know, feel better, and your brain and the memory mechanisms is like, yeah, you keep doing that. Don't worry. If you forget, we'll remember. Like, we'll hold on to it, we'll remember, so we avoid it. You only have one mom, so that's not going to happen again, but your brain doesn't see it like that.
Right.
And so sometimes you have to undo some of these mechanisms, even if it's just for a brief moment, because it's almost like it opens it up to allow something to leave. It's all neurological. Like, it's as much as your mind gets there and your emotions get there, it's sometimes you have to do these like hacks into the neurology to be able to get something to shift.
Yes.
So we're going to be doing hacks this weekend.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
In terms of the energy fatigue and,
It's probably related to that.
oh, I know it's related to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just,
And
that's,
it's kind of interesting, like your thing with the meditation. You're sitting in meditation and then you become more aware. And so you start tapping into those feelings probably a little bit more. And then your neurology goes, yeah, don't do that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you're starting to revisit those things that we're trying to avoid. Why are you doing that? Don't do that. And so it starts to shut down some of your processes.
okay.
The coffee still helps all that, but we'll be getting to it a little bit deeper on the weekend.
Okay, super. I'm so looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're so welcome.
And then go ahead, Christy, then Lala.
Hey, Christy.
Hey guys, so excited to see you this weekend.
Me too.
So I got in a few minutes late, so my apologies because I missed the first few minutes of your
Yeah, we were talking about the secrets of life and
Yeah. I miss it every time. Dang it.
every time.
Every time I'm
We always go, hurry up, Christy's almost here.
exactly. Oh God, sometimes it feels that way. So there's always been I'll just get right to it. There's always been allergy response issues. I have some autoimmune stuff that's been going on for decades, but
Mhm.
ever since I've started doing the deeper work with materialization breath, obviously there's been lots of shifts.
Mhm.
Since those shifts, I'm now having physical things that are happening and that are exaggerating that I'm trying to work through. And I've tried a couple things, but I'm, in listening to what you were talking about with Troy with the, immune response, I'm
Mhm.
wondering if I could try some of that.
Yeah, I'll just bundle it up and I'll bring it with me.
Okay, awesome. That would be great.
And so maybe until then, do you have some Melissa?
I do have Melissa.
Why don't you take you didn't hear me say this, take like 4 or 5 drops internally, not just 1 or 2, like double down on it and do it like maybe a couple times a day and see if that just doesn't help calm all of that down.
I'm writing it down, but I did not hear it. So
Yeah.
perfect. And I'll do that until I see you guys. The other weird thing is I'm having all these like digestive things where the stomach is bloated, severe achy stuff. So I've been like, of course, I'm researching caraway seed, but I started chewing caraway seed and doing digestive calm. The digestive calm did not really make any difference. I tried taking.
Have you tried ginger? Why don't you
I
just try
have
some?
Okay, no, I'll try that. It's not.
Ginger is great. Like, you know how like we talk about like lemongrass is a cure-all and sage is a cure-all. Like for the gut, ginger's kind of a cure-all. Like you could kind of like all the weird things that go into the gut. It's not always like the best choice for one specific thing, but like just when you got like something's going on, just start hitting it with ginger.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I did just grab just because it was on my nightstand and I needed to lay down for a minute just to kind of try to breathe through it. Etheric cords. Etheric cords did calm some of that down. So I tried cutting cords, cleaning and all that. So I don't know, maybe it's twofold, like it's not just one thing.
Keep working the cord thing. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
If you're, because you're doing the materialization process and, I think I had you using Rue. Is that what I had
Yes,
you
you
do?
did. And
Yeah.
that has been a little intense, but I'm working through it.
So, I mean, you can back off of that for a little bit just till things stabilize. But I would say that it helps to resolve like conflicts and things, but sometimes there's the inner conflicts and then there's the outer conflicts. You know what I mean? And the inner conflicts, it helps to resolve, and it helps you to resolve the outer conflicts, but sometimes the outer conflict is maybe more the situation or the person rather than you. And still have to process it. You still have to be able to shift things so that you can be okay, but it's not always you. You know what I mean? And this is where I would say there's probably maybe a little bit of concern is things I think get directed at you and Jeff because of Jeff's work.
You've said
No,
that before. Okay.
Yeah, his position and how many people, you know, are in the company and everything. You know, it's very common in higher management that the family has issues because things being directed at the person in the company. You know, I've had several like CEOs or presidents of companies, of big companies. They'll say different things like the bad luck starting again, or you know, something's going on with my family. Can you like clean it off? And it's just stuff being projected at them. And it's not always conscious on the employees or the partners or, you know, whatever it is. But whenever I look at you guys, I always see a big like kind of wave coming at you guys all the time.
Okay, I'll work with that. I
It can also be competitors.
Okay,
You know what I mean? It might not even be people you know. Like it's not like you can go in and have a come to Jesus meeting with everybody and go, we're going to resolve this. It might be the competition. It might be, you know, it could be all kinds of things. So I would just keep working the third chord thing, because even when I look at you now, there's a bunch of still not necessarily negative chords, which makes me think it's people that you know, but it's the chords are very contaminated.
okay, I'll keep working etheric chords. I was going back to, I just really was examining my own internal BS of my
Mhm.
own, getting in my own way and my own internal
Sure.
obstacles and my, like, I was kind of digging deep on that, like, yeah,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
my garbage.
I
that
love
need
that.
to shift, but also at the same time, things were getting intense, so.
Yeah.
I'll work both of them.
Because you know, like here's the thing with that. It's like, you know, it's like if you take all the other external things away, there's times where we kind of get in our own way. But the worst version of that is interacting with situations or difficult people, and maybe we don't handle it well, or we don't handle it at all, or it's difficult, or it's triggering, or it's whatever, and it's those things kind of put us in a place where we get a little bit more triggered. That's not like our choosing. We kind of end up there. But you know, I tell this story. I think I've told it to you guys once or twice before. It's this story that I think it's like a shamanic thing. You know, because sometimes they do healings like with telling stories or parables or something. But it's this, you know, it's like this guy, he borrowed some money and he hadn't paid it back, and you know, there was you know, debt collectors looking for him and everything, and they come into his little village. You know, they're on horseback. This is the way it was told to me. They're on horseback and he sees them coming, so he goes running down the street and he tries to hide, and you know, they kind of keep following him, and so he runs through like a butcher shop or something and they keep following him. So he thinks like, where would they not follow me? So he runs over to the brothel and he goes and tries to hide in the brothel, and they come in the brothel looking for him, and he runs out the back door, and you know, he keeps going through all these different things, and then eventually he's like, where would they not follow me? And then he runs to the edge of town and he runs out into the cemetery where it's just like dark and creepy and there's no trees, and you know, the ground's real rocky, and he runs to the corner of the cemetery and he hides behind this headstone, and you know, they're still kind of following him on the horse, and he's run out of places to hide. And, you know, there's just been all these weird things. Like at one point he dresses up like a woman so that it throws him off the track. So he's dressed like a woman hiding in the cemetery, and they finally kind of catch up to him, and they, you know, they say something to him and they go, "What are you doing here? Like, this is crazy. Look at what you look like and everything. What are you doing here? Why are you here?" And he looks at him and he goes, "Because you're here." Right? And he wouldn't have gone there on his own, but trying to get away from the situation or manage the situation or deal with it, or, you know, whatever it is, it just keeps going down this weird rabbit hole until you're just in this weird place that like you never would have got on your own. And if we step back and we look at that energetically, usually the first wave of that is cords. Like cords will start to throw you in a weird spin because you're processing sometimes other people's energy. You know, it's going to physicalize. And if you were to stand and watch like two people go through a little situation and they have an argument, you know, you'll notice that at some point in the argument, like say, you know, you and somebody are having an argument, and at some point you start behaving like that other person, right? And it's not a reaction, it's contamination. Like that contamination hits your energy field, they're being weird and adversarial or whatever it is. And at some point, it starts to enter your energy field. And then how it got there doesn't matter. It just begins to physicalize. So then it affects your physiology, it affects your emotions, and affects your mind. And it just spins you out of control a little bit. And the big thing is cords. And you had years of doing, you know, like service work with the work that you did before. And even now you're still doing some with your projects, but you also have the stuff that potentially is coming from Jeff's work and everything like that. It can be a little bit of an issue. And the flip side of that is, you know, the more we clean it off, the more we kind of can recognize like who we are or what we are, or, you know, I know I've told you guys this story a bunch where Master Cho is going to see somebody. So Master Cho is the spiritual teacher for the ones who don't know who that is. And he's a guru, and he went over to this person's house and they were to have a meeting, and he sat down in the chair and they started talking. And in the middle of the conversation, he goes, "Do you worry?" And the person goes, "No." And he goes, "Huh, okay." And the person kept talking for a minute. He goes, "Are you sure you don't worry?" And the person's like, "No." He's like, "Huh, okay." And then he asked like a third time, "You sure you don't worry?" And he goes, "No." And he goes, "You know, as I sit here, I'm beginning to worry, and that's not me. Like, I don't worry. So there's something contaminating that is making me worry." And so there, he's very aware of himself. So when that starts to come on, he's like, "Oh, that feeling, that is not me. That's something coming from the outside." Right? And so when he said that, the person goes, "Oh, I don't worry, but my wife worries, and she worries when the kids are out, and that's exactly where she sits." So contamination and cords, like those are the first two things that are like the beginning of going down that rabbit hole. And so like when in doubt, you go through and you just start cleaning up the aura, you start cleaning up the cord, you know, the cords, and then see where you're at after that.
Thank you.
And we'll talk more when I see you too.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
And then go ahead, Lala, and then we have one question in chat, and then we'll get to the deeper practice, guys.
Hey,
So
Lala.
stay put.
Hey, Greg, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you for all that you did for my mom. I really
Oh, my
appreciate
pleasure.
it. It was really, really great of you. So I'm asking for a daughter of a loved one. She's
Mhm.
12 years old. She has a
Eh,
very severe eating disorder. She's
Oh.
been in treatment, in and out of
Anorexia or bulimia or a combination?
anorexia nervosa, more than
Yeah.
bulimia. Yeah, she
Yeah.
just really refusing to eat. Her parents are in the midst of a bitter divorce. Father smokes heavy cigarettes. And
Mhm.
so I definitely, when I scan, I see a lot of like dirty elementals around. That's one thing. Speaking of what you were just talking about with Christy, contamination, cords, things like that.
Mhm.
So that's one aspect of it. The mother is a bit suffering from a bit of mental illness at the moment. So the judge sort of precluded the kid from seeing her mother, but they live in this 2-family house situation. So it's
yeah.
sort of like she's looking at her mother from a window, sort of. Anyway, she's been in and out of treatment for 2 months, more in than out.
Mhm.
She just got out, and as soon as she got out, she refused to eat. She went back into the hospital. Now she's back in treatment, and now they want to put her in a psych ward. You know, my cousin and his sisters, and they asked me if I could do healing on her, but you know, my mother just passed away 5
Mhm.
weeks ago. My dad
Mhm.
is going into hospice. So I don't know if I can, but what I'm asking you for is, can you think of anything, a
Yeah.
protocol, one of these, one of your classes that I haven't attended? You could tell me which part. I'll get them started. I'll get them at least on a path.
I honestly, I wouldn't even put them through that much. Like what I would do for that. First off, anorexia is one of the harder ones to treat out of all of that. The eating disorders, because it's like a control thing. Like you're feeling out of control. So the one thing you can control is the body, and so. Usually what I start with that, and sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, it depends on a lot of factors, but there's an oil called Ambret. And Ambret is really good for control oriented issues, either feeling out of control or the over like drive to be in control. Either way, it kind of helps to regulate that. I mean, we all have it to a certain extent. It's just there, it's become exaggerated. And so it's also good for treating like depression. It does some things for brain chemistry. It does a lot of good things. And she could put several drops on her wrist, but I'd have her inhaling it all the time. And then the other thing that I would add to that is either like tarragon, marjoram. I mean, anise or rosemary verbena would work, but I'd probably do tarragon as my choice. And the reason being that if you look at the control issue, the issue is it's an imbalance again in the autonomic nervous system where it's not even necessarily fight flight. You could also kind of throw that under like freeze, like she's not wanting to take action to eat and things like that. But basically it doesn't matter what the definition is. It's an emphasis on the sympathetic part, and the parasympathetic part is diminished. The parasympathetic part is tied to the rest and repair mode, or rest and repair could also be like repair and feed, like is another way of saying it. And so whenever you see something like that, there's usually an imbalance in the nervous system where it's not even that like she's hungry and she's avoiding it. It's like they lose the appetite. Like they don't have the appetite to eat. You stick food in front of them and they're like, eh. That's usually almost always a neurological thing. And granted, there could be psychological reasons why the nervous system went there, but still you have to start unwinding, like a way of saying it is like the digestive tract is very like stress plagued. Like it's emotional stress, it's mental stress, it's environmental stress, it's feeling out of control stress, it's like, you know, trying to maintain some sort of control stress, but basically all that manifests as like stress in the gut. And tarragon is good for that. Marjoram is good for that. Anise is good for that. Rosemary, verbena is good for that. But especially tarragon and marjoram are good for a stress-plagued digestive tract, and they encourage the body to go more into the parasympathetic state. And that's important in this particular situation. I would see how she does with that. And then after that, we could put her on like a maybe a little bit broader protocol with maybe a couple more oils integrated into that. But I'd almost let her fixate on those two if she'll do it. You know, because here's the issue with this is like, sometimes with anorexia, and you start shifting them out of that state, that's the one area that they have control, and you're almost taking away their control a little bit. So like you almost want to kind of give them something and let them kind of self-regulate it and see if it helps or works or something, and that they kind of switch the mindset of, instead of controlling the food intake, we're going to control my healing or my rate of healing or how I feel. And, you know, that starts to be like a tipping point to get them to go that way. But sometimes the environment or the situation can be a little much. And it's like I always would say it like this. It's like tipping over a Coke machine. You know, you don't walk up to one of those Coke machines, you know, where you put the $1 in, you can get a can out or something. You just don't walk over to it by yourself and like push it over. You got to kind of rock it back and forth. And then eventually you can reach, you know, not that I've ever done it, but like, you know, or at least that's what I'm going to say, and push it over. But this is a lot like that, where you get in and you might get a little progress and then they're going to push back. And then you kind of wait and you go and you do a little bit more progress and then they push back. And then you do a little bit more progress and then they'll push back. That's kind of normal. And so even when they're pushing back, I would just say, like, let it happen for a little bit. And then when things kind of calm down, because at first it's going to be like, no, you almost want to wait till the guard goes down a little bit and then go, okay, come on, let's try this again. And I would start with those two things right off the bat. And if they handle that well, you could do more. But if that's a difficult thing, like, then we might have to look at some other strategies.
Okay.
You know, another strategy, you know, I could write this out, but I mean, she would really have to kind of participate. And, you know, I don't know anything about her, but just the anorexics I've treated in the past, sometimes they'll participate, sometimes they won't. So we almost have to see how much she's going to participate. But there are some processes where it can help unwind the things from the environment. But again, we have to get her to like a place where she's going to participate. You know, right now, she just feels like this is the only thing she can control. So it's almost like trying to get a squirrel to eat out of your hands. Don't make a lot of eye contact. Don't make any sudden movements. Just be really still. Just keep watching. Just keep waiting. And at some point, you know, the squirrel will eat the nut out of your hand. But you just got to be like, you have to be. She has to feel like she has a little bit of control in the situation, you know, because if you take it away too, she's not going to participate.
Agreed.
Does that make sense?
It really does.
Yeah, yeah.
So tarragon and ambret, but just inhalation.
Yeah, inhalations. I mean, if she'll take the tarragon internally, she can take a couple drops in water, but she probably won't. You could put it in a lotion or like a liniment, you know, alcohol or something, and have her rub it on her belly. But Anorexics, there's a bunch of conditions like this where you have kind of some sets of things that you can do, but you almost have to evaluate each person like on a case-by-case basis, because they're going to be at different places or different degrees of the condition. And so you're not quite sure where she's at with all that. That she's so young means that she's probably more treatable. Like if she was, in her late 20s or something, this would be a lot harder to treat. Still treatable, but harder.
Yeah.
There's a lot more nuances you'd have to be aware of and factor in.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're
for
so,
that.
so look, I mean, keep us posted if you need help or talking through it or something, including the thing with your dad. If he's in hospice,
Yes,
keep us
will
posted.
do.
Yeah.
Greg, one more thing. I did
Sure.
ask you to make the Master Serapis Bay for me, and you said that you might be able to. I
Oh
asked
yeah,
you a couple
I
months
have
ago.
that. I have that. Send Samantha email just to remind me.
Okay.
I have that made. Yeah, I have that made.
Oh, I really need it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I didn't get that to you. Boy, I must have just slipped my mind.
Thank you very much.
You're
It's
so
really
welcome.
helpful.
Yeah,
Okay.
good to hear your voice.
Thank you, Greg.
A question about applying oils topically to wrists. Are there other areas it can be applied topically for the same effect as the wrist? I know someone who is sensitive to scents, and the wrists are a bit much for them.
The top of their feet. The reason you're doing wrist is there's not much fatty tissue there, so it goes into the bloodstream a little bit faster. Another spot is the temples, but if the wrist was enough or too much, the temples are going to be way too much. But the top of your feet doesn't have quite the fatty tissue like the sides or down below, and so that's the other place to put it. Yeah.
Great. And great. Questions, guys? Now.
Yeah. So let us do. Let's see, we got 25 minutes. I was going to do something that took longer. Let's have you pull out. If you have like spikenard or vetiver, lavender, hyssop, like what's that blend? Unwind, spikenard extra. Yeah, let's see if you have any of those. If you don't, I'll still come up with a couple of things, but see if you have something like that. If you don't have those, like mugwort woodwork, galbanum woodwork. If you did the class this last weekend, you could break out your acacia. Okay, so we're going to do a thing where there's different aspects to the stress response, and there's different ways of calming it down. One is like we were talking about earlier at the beginning of the session with Troy about calming down the adaptive immunity. And sometimes it's still receiving information from the receptors, and it starts this like chain reaction. We don't have to get too technical or clinical, but one of the ways is you can put spikenard on your feet, or vetiver, or lavender, something, marjoram, but we want to clean out the lower centers of the the limbs. So like the back of the knee, the front of the ankle, and then the soles of the feet. Okay. And if you do this on a daily basis, you'll notice over a period of time that your responses to stressful stimuli actually reduces quite a bit. And so let's just explore this a little bit. So just begin inhaling. Your awareness is on the back of your knee. Actually, let's do this. Check in with your body first, and just check in with your whole body. The area around your spine, your shoulders, your back. Check in with it and see how you feel. Okay. And notice where your tense spots are. Notice pain in the painful spots. Just check the body out. And then we're going to do the lower limb. Your neck, your back. Okay, so begin inhaling. Your awareness is on the back of the knee. You're taking long, slow, deep breaths with your awareness on the back of the knee. Taking long, slow, deep breaths at the back of the knee. And then go to the front of your ankle. You're going to the front of the ankles. And then the soles of your feet. And then just be still. Let everything go. Just be still. So you're quieting down your body. This also has a cleansing effect on your energy body. And it makes you a little bit less reactive to things coming in. Like we were talking with Christy, like things might be coming in the cords or being projected at you, or you're just in situations that maybe emotionally or etherically are a little bit contaminating, like, you know, working in a stressful office. It helps reduce the energetic and physiological reaction. A thing that you could use also in those situations is hyssop. Hyssop reduces the level of, how to say it, it reduces you absorbing negativity from the environment or from people. Chakra root cleanser does that too, by the way. Okay, begin inhaling again. Your awareness is on the back of your knees. Keep inhaling. In front of your ankles, you're taking long, slow, deep breaths. And then the soles of your feet. And just be still. Now, if you have hyssop or chakra root cleanser, let's have you pull those out. And if you don't, just keep using what you're using. But if you have hyssop or chakra root cleanser, let's bring those things out. Okay. And what I'd like you to do is think of situations that are like current right now. Something going on. It doesn't always have to be super negative, but just think of things going on. Even good situations still have negative components to it. Put your awareness on the external situation and then just begin inhaling the hyssop or the chakra root cleanser or whatever you were just using. Keep thinking of the external situation. Switch to a different situation. Okay, and then just be still. How's that feeling? It feels nice and soothing. It feels cleansing and soothing. Yeah, yeah. I was just getting some feedback from Samantha. I did a version of this during a really crazy time in my life when, I don't know, life was just in chaos and there was people upset at me, and this was like my little security blanket at the end of the day. Yeah, a rough time. I can laugh about it now, but at the time it wasn't that funny. Okay, again, external situation. You're thinking of the external situation. You're just taking long, slow, deep breaths. Move to a different situation. And then just let go. Just let go of everything. Pull out your first oil. If you've been using the same one, just stick with it. But if you switched, go back to that first oil. Begin inhaling the back of the knees. We're still just going to do a little quick cleanup. Go to the front of the ankles. And then the soles of your feet. And then just let go. So I hate to sniff and run, but we're going to have to jump over to the Astara thing. We posted the link if you want to join us for the prayer bowl blessing. But what we just did was to calm down the stress response, both internally and from external factors. And so it has a cleansing effect on the energy body. But hopefully you can join us this weekend. We have Sundays, a free class with a lymphatic class, and a bunch of you have signed up for the trauma class. And so if not, we'll see you maybe next Tuesday. Take care, you guys.